Hello again everyone, Julian the drummer, Bristol record collector here with part two of the two videos that I'm doing on blues records. These are some of the pretty essential blues records that were released, and in this part we're looking at the ones that came out in the UK by British artists, who of course took their influence from what was happening over in the USA. We're going to begin with the person who pioneered blues in Britain, and that was Alexis Corner. Now he, along with harmonica player Cyril Davis, set up the Ealing Blues Club in the early 60s. This was after they brought over lots of American artists such as Muddy Waters and Big Bill Broonzy to help popularize the music. And then they started their own band, the Blues Incorporated, and that spawned several other British blues groups who were taken with it and wanted to popularise it. And of course went on, many of the musicians who went along to the Ealing Blues Club got up and jammed with Blues Incorporated and subsequently formed their own bands, many of whom were more successful, but certainly brought rhythm and blues to a wider audience here in the UK. So the album, which was arguably the first blues album to be made in the UK, was Blues Incorporated R&B from the Marquee, and that was issued in 1962 on Decca's Ace of Clubs label. Now the title is a bit of a misnomer because it says R&B from the Marquee, but it wasn't recorded at the Marquee at all, but in Decca's studios. What happened was the Blues Incorporated used to play regularly at the Marquee Club in London. They got a good following there, so I guess they thought that by calling the album R&B from the Marquee, that would attract a few fans. This one is, well, first of all, as you can see, it's on the nice original Ace of Clubs label. Has got a bit of a scratch on it, but it's doesn't render it unplayable. Picked this up a few months ago. It's not too expensive to buy. The only thing about this is I'm not sure how genuine 1962 this is, simply because of the fact that most record sleeves around about that time had the flip back covers. It just sort of, the front bit linked over the back to have a sort of rim there. And this one hasn't got that, so I'm thinking that it could be this was a bit of a slightly later pressing, round about perhaps 1964, 65, something like that. Let me know in the comments if you've got one that has got the flip back sleeve, because I'd be interested to see. I've not seen another one, certainly not in recent years, so I didn't look too closely at the time. But other than that, this is a pretty good copy, and it features, as I say, Alexis Corner guitar and vocals with Cyril Davis on harmonica and vocal. Has guest vocalist Long John Baldry on a couple of tracks. Then we have the rhythm section of Graham Burbage on drums, and Spike Heatley bass, Johnny Parker piano, and Dick Hextall Smith on tenor saxophone. This has a range of R&B standards on it with some original material as well. Rain is Such a Lonesome Sound, which is a Jimmy Witherspoon track which Long John Baldry sings on. I Got My Brand on You, Muddy Waters one. Spooky But Nice, I Want to Put a Tiger in Your Tank. Got My Mojo Working, Hoochie Coochie Man, Fingers Cafe, Alexis Corner instrumental. How Long Blues, Thought I Heard the Train Whistle Blow. That's a Long John Baldry original. It's raw, it's kind of fairly unsophisticated, but then again this was 1962 and blues hadn't really been recorded in such a way before here in the UK. Groups like the Chris Barber Band were doing did inject some blues tunes into their repertoire, as did one or two other trad jazz bands, but it hadn't been done in this manner before, very much in the Chicago blues style with the Cyril Davis harmonica. So this was quite a unique record, and it set the tone really. So it's a good one to have. It has been reissued several times over the years. And of course, famously, people who passed through Alexis Corner's band, who got up and jammed with them at the Ealing Blues Club, were people like Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, Brian Jones, who of course went on to form the Rolling Stones, Paul Jones, Manfred Mann, Eric Burdon, The Animals, Eric Clapton from the Yardbirds, lots of them. And the rhythm section shortly after this came out were Jack Bruce and Ginger Baker. Charlie Watts also played drums with them as well. So there were lots of people who passed through the Blues Incorporated and went on to do big things. So yep, for a genuine first British blues album, this is Alexis Corner's Blues Incorporated, R&B from the Marquee on Ace of Clubs, 1962. As a sort of companion to that, the record companies were quite keen on pushing as many artists as possible who were playing rhythm and blues. So Decca decided to issue this, which is a compilation simply called R&B. Bit of a tatty cover, this one, because it's there's very few of them around. I bought this one back in the 70s for about £3 at a market, which is quite a bargain today. But it's got lots of the early pioneers of British R&B at the time on here. Alexis Corner again, John Mayall's Blues Breakers, the Graham Bond Organisation, Zoot Money in his big roll band, and Dave Berry, who he started off recording some R&B tunes but drifted of course more into pop material in the 60s. But this is the tracks on this album were recorded specifically for it, so they weren't on any other albums by the artist concerned. So we have Graham Bond Organisation doing High Heel Sneakers, Long Legged Baby, Hoochie Coochie Man, Strut Around, and we have Dave Berry doing You Better Move On, which the Stones covered, his version of Not Fade Away, and Diddly Daddy, a Bo Diddley tune. John Mayall's Blues Breakers with Mr. James and Crawling Up a Hill, which I think was his first single. And Zoot Money's Big Roll Band doing Walking the Dog and Get on the Right Track Baby. And it's produced by Mike Vernon. And whilst the sleeve has seen better days, the record itself is pretty clean. There's the nice old red Decca label, 1964. and it's a good compilation. And like I say, some what I suppose now would be fairly rare tracks by the artist concerned. It'd be difficult to find them on other records. So yeah, if you can find one of these, then you got something good here. So that's R&B compilation Decca 1964. Now another seminal British R&B album was from the next artist, who certainly amassed a big following when he played at the Flamingo Club, which was in London, and he played there for quite a long time, initially doing the all-nighters before they were closed down, and he went on to forge a very successful pop career, but he still has a lot of blues and R&B in his set, and that's Georgie Fame and the Blue Flames, and this is his debut album, Rhythm and Blues at the Flamingo, and it was issued in 1964 on Columbia. It was before he had his first hit with Yeah Yeah at the end of 1964, beginning of 1965. There's the lovely old Columbia label there, and this is a pretty nice copy, and it gets it's a good live atmosphere, as you would expect. I suppose with a lot of these records that were recorded live, it was a case of you had to be there, but this one I think does give a good authentic sound on it. Georgie Fame, of course, really pioneered the use of the Hammond organ with the Leslie speaker unit, and it's had a good effect on here with Night Train, Let the Good Times Roll, Do the Dog, Work Song, Parchment Farm, You Can't Sit Down, Baby Please Don't Go. Then there's one or two other sort of influences, a bit of Latin and ska with Eso Beso, Humpty Dumpty, bit of Motown with Shop Around, the Miracles song. So it's yeah, the Blue Flames at the time, the lineup was Georgie Fame and Hammond organ vocals, Johnny Marshall baritone, Mick Eve tenor, Big Jim Sullivan guitar, Boots Slade bass, Red Reese drums, Tommy Thomas congas. So yeah, a good set on here, and a pretty important early British blues album, Georgie Fame, Rhythm and Blues at the Flamingo, 1964. Now the next album I've included because it's one of the most famous groups to emerge from the rhythm and blues scene, and also because it's their first album and it's good pure blues and R&B, and it shows their roots and what they were about at the time. And this is, of course, the Rolling Stones. It's their first album, self-titled, issued by Decca in 1964. You'll see from this, that's what I meant by when I looked at the Alexis Corner album earlier. The fact that this was issued in 1964 and it does have the flip back sleeve makes me think that perhaps the Alexis Corner one is a later issue. However, that aside, this is a classic album. It's also highly collectible now, particularly this one. The tracks very quickly: Route 66, I Just Want to Make Love to You, Honest I Do, Mona. Now that's the Bo Diddley song that they do on here, which on later pressings is listed as I Need You Baby for some reason, but this very early one has the correct title Mona on it, and that makes it quite a collectible record. Then they do Now I've Got a Witness, Little by Little, I'm a King Bee, Carol, of course, Chuck Berry one that was in their set for many years. Tell Me, which was, I think it was their first original song. I don't know if it was the one which they wrote when Andrew Oldham, their manager, locked them in the kitchen and wouldn't let them out until they'd written something. But anyway, Can I Get a Witness, You Can Make It If You Try, and Walking the Dog. A couple of guests, Gene Pitney and Phil Spector on here, with some piano by Ian Stewart as well, who was a founding member. There's that nice old Decca label again. Lovely copy of this. Very pleased to have it. And a big mono sound on this. Full throttle. Gets you going right from the start with Route 66 in the same way that the Beatles' first album does with I Saw Her Standing There. You had to have a good rocker to open your album with to get people's attention straight away, and this definitely does, and it's a really nice, raw, authentic R&B album. Well worth getting. It's not difficult to find, certainly not in a reissue format. The second album, the Rolling Stones #2, in a similar vein, issued later the same year. And then the Stones gradually, they started writing their own songs, and they moved into a more, I suppose, to begin with, a pop vein, and then into a straight rock and roll vein with their own material. But this is as good as any to get, I think. That's the Rolling Stones debut album, 1964. Now, one of the classic British R&B albums is this next one, from another founder of the British blues. Mentioned Alexis Corner earlier. He was really closely followed by John Mayall, and this is the album that everybody knows. I think it's commonly known as the Beano album. John Mayall's Blues Breakers with Eric Clapton, issued in 1966. If you don't know this record and you're into blues, British R&B, then this is an absolute must to get because it's a classic. Arguably Eric Clapton at his best. I don't know, maybe Cream perhaps, Derek and the Dominoes, who knows. But he was certainly on fire on this record, not least because I believe he just hit the volume up to 11, and the studios weren't used to that at all, and that's why it gives this album its unique sound. There's the Decca label again. This is a really nice copy, and we have some classic John Mayall tracks on here, mixture of his original songs and some standard blues. All Your Love, Otis Rush song. Hideaway, Freddie King one. Little Girl, Another Man, Double Crossing Time. What I Say, Ray Charles one. Key to Love, Parchment Farm, Have You Heard, Rambling on My Mind, Robert Johnson one, which Eric Clapton was so influenced by. Stepping Out, which is another classic Eric Clapton guitar-led instrumental. It Ain't Right. The lineup here: John Mayall, vocal, piano and organ and harmonica. Eric Clapton, vocal and guitar. John McVie, bass. Huey Flint, drums. And a few sax players coming in here and there. John Almond, Alan Skidmore, trumpeter Dennis Healy. What can I say? This is just a phenomenal album. Again, like the Stones one, it's a full throttle mono mix. It did later come out in stereo, which to my mind doesn't really give it as much feel as this original mono does. But yeah, this is definitely one to get. John Mayall's Blues Breakers with Eric Clapton, 1966. Now I've got another John Mayer one here simply because he had this knack of finding all these great musicians who went on to form other bands of their own. Um, not least of which was Fleetwood Mac, formed by the guitarist who replaced Eric Clapton, Peter Green. And this is the album that the Blues Breakers made with Peter Green. It's called A Hard Road. Issued in early 1967. And the lineup here: John Mayall, Peter Green on guitar, John McVie bass. Ainsley Dunbar had taken over as the drummer by this time. This is on Decca again. Just a same old Decca label there. Really nice copy. And well, Peter Green was just phenomenal on this album, and it showed what he was going to go on to with Fleetwood Mac in the early years. A Hard Road, It's Over, You Don't Love Me, The Stumble, which is one of the Freddie King songs that Peter Green is featured on, which is really fantastic. Another Kind of Love, Hit the Highway, Leaping Christine, Dust My Blues, which of course everybody did, the old Elmore James song. There's Always Work, The Same Way, The Supernatural, which is a fantastic Peter Green guitar instrumental. Lots of sustain there, great feel on it. Top of the Hill, Sunday After a While, and Living Alone. John Mayall's original songs on here are great. Really, he always had this great way of bringing top instrumentalists to the fore, and it certainly works on this one. So again, another one worth getting. John Mayall's Blues Breakers, A Hard Road, 1967. Which brings us nicely on to the group that Peter Green formed after he left John Mayall. And that's Fleetwood Mac. And this is the first Fleetwood Mac album. Billed as, well, it says just as Fleetwood Mac there, but on the spine it says Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac. I'm not sure he was very happy about that, because I don't think he wanted top billing, as it were, because he wanted the group to have Mick Fleetwood and John McVie's name in it, so that if Peter Green left, then they would still be the product of the name, as it were. This came out on Blue Horizon. Big Blue Horizon label there, 1968. It was arguably the first successful Blue Horizon album to be released. So yeah, this is the classic early Fleetwood Mac lineup, the best in my opinion, the blues lineup. Peter Green vocal, guitar, harmonica, Jeremy Spencer vocal, slide guitar, piano, John McVie bass, Mick Fleetwood on drums. So Peter Green managed to get John McVie from John Mayall. Mick Fleetwood had briefly played with the Blues Breakers. Jeremy Spencer came from, I think, the northeast, and he was a very well-renowned slide guitar player. Loved Elmore James, among others, and you can hear a lot of that on this. The tracks My Heart Beat Like a Hammer, Merry-Go-Round, Long Grey Mare, Hellhound on My Trail, Shake Your Money Maker again, which so many people did, Looking for Somebody, No Place to Go, My Baby's Good to Me, I Loved Another Woman, Cold Black Night, The World Keep on Turning, and Got to Move. Bob Brunning actually played bass on Long Grey Mare. That was before John McVie was able to join up with the band. This is just a cracking album. It's just full force, in your face blues, no messing about. Peter Green just phenomenal. Jeremy Spencer, fantastic. Whole band is just on fire on this. Been reissued several times over the years. I'm quite pleased to have this original Blue Horizon copy of Fleetwood Mac debut album. Right, another from the late 60s. The British blues boom seemed to happen in two phases. One was the initial rush in 1963, 64, 65. And then again it started to happen again in 1968, 69, 70. And of course one of the greatest ever British guitarists of any type of music, but one of the best blues guitarists of the time was Jeff Beck. And this is his debut solo album, Truth. Of course, Jeff Beck was in the Yardbirds. He replaced Eric Clapton in 1965. This is quite a heavy album, but it's basically blues. And we have a classic lineup here: Rod Stewart vocals, Ron Wood bass, Mickey Waller drums, and some guest keyboard players, J.P. Jones and Nicky Hopkins, and of course Jeff Beck's fantastic, stinging, inventive guitar. Lots of wah-wah used on here. We have Shapes of Things, which is an alternative version of the old Yardbirds hit. Let Me Love You, pretty standard blues thing. Morning Dew, a Tim Rose song. You Shook Me, another standard blues. Old Man River, an adaptation of the Jerome Kerr musical song. Green Sleeves, Rock My Plimsoll, which is Rock Me Baby, basically, B.B. King tune. Beck's Bolero, and that's obviously a guitar showcase. Blues Deluxe, slow blues, and a great version of Howlin' Wolf's I Ain't Superstitious to round things off. As I say, this was issued in 1968. It's on Columbia. Here we got the nice old Columbia label there, and this is a nice copy. The great early Jeff Beck group lineup. The follow-up album was called Beck Ola. I think Tony Newman replaced Mickey Waller on drums on that one, but that's still a great album. Much more of the same, really. But this really was quite groundbreaking for the time. So worth looking out for. Should be able to get although this is an original one, there's some, you can get a cheaper one on the later Columbia label or the reissues that came out since. So it's Jeff Beck, Truth, 1968. Right, finally, taking it on a few years, a lot of the people who began their blues playing careers in the 1960s went off to do other things and then decided to do it all again. And there's no better example of that than the Blues Band. And they were formed in 1979 by former Manfred Mann members Paul Jones and Tom McGuinness. And they were joined by Gary Fletcher on bass and vocals, and Dave Kelly guitar, slide guitar and vocals, and Huey Flint again playing drums. This was their second album. It's issued in 1980. I think is their best. We have 29 Ways, Find Yourself Another Fool, Noah Lewis Blues, Hallelujah I Love Her So, adaptation of the Ray Charles song, Treat Her Right, the old Roy Head tune. Lonely Avenue, of Doc Pomus, Mort Schumann one that Ray Charles did. I'm Ready, Muddy Waters. Green Stuff, Hey Hey Little Girl, originals. Can't Hold On, a Paul Jones one. SUS Blues, Dave Kelly song. The Cat, another original one. And they're joined by some famous keyboard players: Ian Stewart, Geraint Watkins, Rockin' Doopsy, the Cajun musician, and Chester Zeno. They play accordion and washboard respectively on one of the tracks. This is a really good album. Nice full sound. It's distributed through Arista, but it's got the Blues Band's own imprint on the label there. Great sound, great production on this, and well worth getting. I saw them several times in London in the early 80s, and they always put on a fantastic show, and they really loved their blues, and that's why they did it. And they were going, they sort of reformed periodically over the years and did some more gigs. Whether they're still doing it now, I don't know, but it's certainly worth getting hold of some of their albums, of which, as I say, I think this one is the best. The Blues Band Ready, 1980. There we are. That's the blues videos wrapped up. I hope you found something of interest in there. If you know of any others that I haven't included and you think are worthy of mention, then do put them in the comments box. As always, please subscribe if you like the videos. I'll be doing another one soon. Press the like button as well. It all means a lot. And hope to speak to you all soon in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.